YouTube. So when your chance, you can go through them and follow along. So for today's section, we'll be looking at cleaning data in SQL. So last section, we looked at common table expressions and subqueries. For today's section, we'll look at data cleaning in SQL. So it's common knowledge that most times data will not be in the right format. You need to carry out some transformations and clean it up before you can then carry out your analysis. So we'll look at some common data cleaning methods in SQL. So the very first one we'll look at is the left function. So if you're familiar with Excel, right, you might have come across this function, the left function. It's very similar to the left function in Excel. So left function, it extracts a number of characters from a string, starting from the left-hand side. So we'll see examples now and it makes sense. But the left function, it extracts a number of characters from a string, starting from the left-hand side. And the syntax, right, in SQL, you call a left function, then in parentheses, right, you put in the string or the text you want to extract the characters from. You put a comma, and then next you put the number of characters. So let's see an example using our database. So I opened up my SQL Server Management Studio, and I'll open up a new query. So we'll continue working with our patch and posy database. And before I use database, let me just do a demo of how the let function works. So let's see. So let's say I have this simple query, select and I have just a text, right? Select data, or just type in something simple, customer. Right, just a simple. So what this just returns a text that says customer, right? Execute this, and you can see the result, right? Customer. So what if I want to extract the first 6 characters? So I want to extract custom from customer. How do I go about that? And let me give this a title. So use cleaner as demo. So when I execute this, it just gives you a column called demo, and you have a text customer. So let's say we want to extract the first 6 characters, right? So custom from customer. How do you go about that? So when I come here, right, in SQL, I'll put in the left function, left. And left function, right, it takes in 2 arguments. The first one is this string or text you want to extract characters from, right? And then you put a comma. So I want to extract how many characters. On the left-hand side, count, and I want to extract 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters. That's custom. So I'll come on here after the comma, I'll put the 6 there. So I'm saying extract 6 characters, right, from this text customer. So when I execute this, I expect to have custom as my result. You know, the whole query, yeah. So you see, right, I'm telling this code is just saying from the word customer, extract the first 6 characters, right? So 6 says from the left-hand side, count 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it extracts those 6 characters. So that's how the left function works, right? Let's see a proper use case. So before that, let's look at the right function also. So the right function, right, is similar to the left function. So what it does is that it extracts from the right-hand side, right? So let's see this same word, I want to extract the last three characters, REM, right? So I'll just put a right here. So I'm saying from the right-hand side, right, extract REM. So that's 3 characters. I'll put 3 there, 3 characters. When I execute this, right? So apologize, MER, right? So it returns the last 3 characters, MER, that's ma. I seen that here, right? So that's how this functions work. So let's see proper examples, proper applications, right? So the left function extracts on the left-hand side. The right function extracts on the right-hand side. And the same syntax, right? Writes the text you want to extract from and the number of characters. So let's see the first question. This says, in the accounts table, there's a column holding the websites for each company. The last 3 digits specify what type of web address they are using. Pull these extensions and provide how many of each website type exists in the accounts table. So in the accounts table is a column for the websites. The last 3 letters or characters shows the kind of website. Is it .com, .net, etc., right? We have to pull these extensions and then show how many of each website type exists in the accounts table. So let's go on to SSMS, right? So first things first, I'll just return the top 10 rows in the accounts table. So we'll see what it looks like. So select top 10 and I'll just put star, everything from the accounts table. So select the top 10 rows from the accounts table. So we'll have a glimpse of what the data looks like. So I execute this, right? And you can see there are a couple of columns, but we are interested in the website column, right? The website column, the last 3 characters shows the kind of extension. Is it .net, .com, .co, etc.? So we'll extract the last 3 characters and then we'll count how many of each type exist in this table. So we'll apply some of the concepts we've gone through before now. So what I'll do is I'm focused on just the website column. And since we're extracting from the end of the text, right, the last 3 characters, we use a right function instead of the left. So from the right-hand side, count the last 3 characters. So I'll come on here and I'm still working with the accounts table, so I won't change this. I'll come over here and change this, right? Select, so I'll put the right function, right? And what column? I'm working with the website column. So I'll put the website column here. So from the website column, right, I want to extract the last 3 characters. So I'll put 3 here. And let's see what this gives us before we finish the second part of the question. So I execute this, right? And you can see, right, from the extracts the last 3 characters. I will give it an alias as extension. So it has a column title. So extension, right? So you can see these are all the extension types. Com. You have nets. I think there are a few of nets also. So we just try to group them by the kinds of extension. So this gives us all the extensions, right? We have to count each type. So what we'll do is I'll do a count star, right? So the first column is the extension type, right? I'll then count all the number of rows in this table. So count star as number of occurrences. Yeah. So since we are aggregating, right, we have to introduce a group by. So I'll group by the extension. So I'm saying for each extension type, show me the count of that extension. So from accounts, right, and I'll group by this value, right, the extension type. So group by this. And we can also order, right? So sort the results by the number of occurrences. So order by of occurrences in descending order. These are all things we've gone through before now. So execute this. Let's see what it gives us. So here are results, right? We have 3 different extension types. So the com extension type has 3 phoneme occurrences. Net has 1 and org has 1. So we're able to extract, right, the required character using the right function and then count and group by. So this is an application of the right function. So please, if you have any questions, you can type in the chat and I'll attend to it. The next question, right, it says, use the accounts table to pull the first letter of each company name to see the distribution of company names that begin with each letter or number. From the accounts table, right, we'll look at the names of the companies and then we'll return the first letters. We'll also see the distribution of the company names. So let's say, for example, A, you have 10 companies, that way A. B, you have 2, just like that, right? We'll show each letter occurrence and its frequency, right? So from A to Z, we'll try to extract the first letters and then group by the first letters. So very similar to what we just did now, except that this time we'll work with the account name and then the first letter of the names. So here what I'll do is what we did previously, right? I'll just try to return the top 10 rows. So we'll see what the table looks like. So top 10 star accounts. So I highlight this and execute. So these are our columns one more time, right? So we want to work with the name column. This name is showing you the company names, Walmart, ExxonMobil, etc. So I want to extract the very first letter of each name. So W, E, A, etc. And then we'll count number of times each letter occurs, right, across this table for the company names. So what I'll do is I'll just edit the first query we had. So this time I'm working with the name, right, and the first letter. So the first letter means from the left-hand side, W. So I'll put in the left function, left. So left function, right? And I'm working with the name column. So I'll put name there, name column. And I want to extract the very first character. So I'll put 1. And I'll call this as first letter. So this extracts the first letter from the name column. And the exact same thing, right? We'll count all the rows and then we'll try to count the occurrence for each row. So we'll group by this column, right? So we'll group by this, the first letter. We'll group by this and then order by the frequency of occurrences. So once we have this, I can execute. And from what you can see, right, C and A have the most occurrences. Next, you have P, M, etc. So that's what we want to have, right? The first letters and their occurrences. So we're able to achieve that with the left function. So let's go on to the next question quickly. So this says, use the account table and a case statement to create 2 groups. One group of company names. So we want to make 2 groups, right? From the accounts table. The first group will have company names that start with a number. Second group will have company names that start with a letter. Then we are now asked, what proportion of company names starts with a letter, right? So let's go back to SQL Server Management Studio. So back to the question one more time. Working with the accounts table and look at the company names, right? The ones that start with numbers, the ones that start with letters, we have two groups, and then we'll show the proportion that start with letters. So let's take this step by step. Working with the accounts table. So the same query, we can just modify it. But I want to just write this from scratch. So it's not all happening. So I come on here, select, working with the name column, right? The company name. So I want to create two groups. Those that start with letters and those that start with numbers. So remember what we did in the prior section, right? The case statements is similar to the if else statement in Excel. So case when is this, return this, else return that, right? That's what how case when works. So let's try to extract the first name, and then we'll create two groups, one for letters and one for those that start with numbers. So select, let me do it this way. Case when, so case when the first letter, right? So that's left function. So case when, look at the first letter of each row. So left name column, right? And the first letter, 1. So I'm saying case when, so in a case where you look at the first letter, right? And it starts with a number. So for that, we can just, since numbers, right? The first letter, numbers can either be 1, 2, 3, down till 9. So what we can do is we'll use the in statement, right? So case when, look at the first letter, right? If it's in these numbers, so in quotes, or typing in a bracket, I'll type in all the numbers, right? All the possible numbers. So it can be 0, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, it can be 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 in quotes, 8 in quotes, 9 in quotes. So that's all right. It's just one letter, right? So there are some companies that can start with a letter, right? And it's just one letter. So it can either be 0 through 9. Those are the possible occurrences. So we are saying what in a case where the first letter, right, is either of what 0, 1, 2, down till 9. That's what it's saying. Look at the first letter, right? If it's in this, if it's either of these numbers, 0 down till 9, what should happen? So case when the first letter is a number, right? So I'll prompt a new line. So have clean code. So I can say then one. So if you look at the first letter is a number, right? Return 1. Else return 0. And this column, what will we call it? I'll call it end as, so call it what? Number column. So before I do the second part, let me just return it and see what it looks like from accounts table, right? So let's return it and see what it looks like. So I explain what you're doing. So execute this, let's see what it gives us. Return the actual name. So I'll explain what we're doing. So this is the name column, right? For the second part, what we're doing, we're saying what extract the very first letter, W, E, etc. Right? If it's a number, return 1. Else, If it's not a number, return 0, right? So you can see all the first letters here, they are not numbers. So you have 0. But if you scroll down, so this guy here, right? This guy here starts with a number. Let me zoom in. This guy here starts, so this starts with number 3, and you have 1, right? So any row where the name starts with a number, it returns 1. Else, it returns 0, right? So that's what you're trying to do. So we want to do this for 2 scenarios. First scenario, if it's a number, right? Return 1, else 0. We'll also make one more column, right? And this column would say the exact same thing. So case when, right? But now we'll say if it's a letter, return 1. Else, if it's a number, return 0, right? And I will explain why we are doing this in a bit. So I come on here. The exact same thing, right? Case when, but now we'll just swap it. So say if the first letter is a number, return 0. Else, if it's a letter, right, return 1. That's what we're doing here now. And I'll call this column, I'll call it letter. Right? So you're doing the converse situation. So let's execute and see what it gives us. So I execute this. And you can see, right, these are all letters. So you have 1 returned. But when you scroll down to that value, we also saw, yeah, this value here, right? So you can see this a number, it returns 0, right? So we are simply creating 2 columns, 1 for letters, 1 for numbers. If it's a number here, return 1, else 0. Second column is saying if the letter, return 1, else return 0. So once we have these, right, we're almost close to our solution. We want to count those that have numbers, those that have letters. Then we'll find a proportion of those that have letters, right? So what we can do is we'll try to count, right? So what we'll do is we want to count number of occurrences where you have numbers. We'll also count those that have letters, right? And for these, we can use a subquery to achieve this. So this first table, right? I don't need this name. I can take it off since it's not needed. Just to explain what we are doing. So I'll take it off. You don't need it. So what I can do is I'll make it subquery. And here I'll say select sum. So sum up this number column. So if it sums this, right, only those that have 1 will give me results. So if there are 5 rows where you have 1, I will get 5. It means that only 5 rows start with numbers, right? So I'll say sum up the number column as number, right? Similarly, the same thing for here, right? I will sum this column up. If there are 100 columns that have 1s, right? If I sum it up, I'll get 100. It means that what 100 rows start with letters, right? So the same thing, I'll say sum up the letter column as letter, right? So we are doing a subquery, right? I'm trying to select from an existing query. And I'll call this table letter number, example. So these are initial query, right? Now I'm trying to choose what return the sum of this column and the sum of what this other column. So when I return this, let's see what it gives us. So I execute this, and you can see, right, it's showing us that for the numbers, you have just one column that starts with numbers. For letters, you have 350 names that start with letters. So this answers our question to an extent. So quickly, I'll just show something, right? So it's possible to also answer this question without a subquery, right? So you can see we went to our first query to get the rows, right? The first letters, we now sum them together. But I can also achieve this without a subquery. So I can come on here. So this these are initial query, right? Where we had the numbers and their letters, right? So in SQL, it's possible to also use a sum, right? Use a sum function directly with your case statements. So these are case statements, right? Returns 1 and 0. But I can also next this formula with a sum function. So I'll put in sum here, sum. I'll put a bracket, right? And I'll put a bracket here also. I'm saying sum up this column. Same thing here too. I'll say sum up this column, sum, and end, I'll put a bracket here. So let's compare these results, right? So this is our first query result, right? This first one here, we wrote this query. It gave us 1 and 350. The same thing, let's do it with this new query we just created now. Let's see what it gives us. So I execute this. And you see, right, the exact same thing that I've got. So just next the case statement with the sum function, right? And it returns the exact same thing. So that's something to note. So this answers our question, right? 1, 350. If you want, you can go further to, so it says, what proportion of company names start with letters? So out of 351, 350 start with letters, right? And you can do the maths, 350 divided by 351. That should be around 98% or thereabouts. So that's the solution for that question. So let's go on to the next concept. So in SQL Server, right, you have a function called Charindex. So the Charindex function, it searches for a substring in a string and returns the position. So we'll see examples in a bit and it will make more sense. So basically what you're trying to do is you have a text, right? You're looking for a particular letter, for example, or substring in that text. Then what this function does is that it searches a string and returns the position of that substring or character. So if it searches the string, right, and it does not find the substring, then it returns 0. And then it's important to note that the function, right, is case insensitive. So it treats both uppercase and lowercase the same, right? So if you're looking for uppercase C and the function comes across lowercase c, it will treat both the same way. So you should note that when using the function. And the syntax, right? Charindex, then it takes 3 arguments, substring, string, and stat. The first 2 arguments, substring and string, they are compulsory, right? The last argument starts, that's optional. So substring is basically what you're looking for, right? Let's say I have a string that says money, for example. I'm looking for O in money, right? Where is O in money position? So that substring will be O, right? O. The string now is what? The actual text, right? Which is what? Money. So start now is just trying to tell you where should I start from when looking for the text? From the first text or second text or third text, right? But it's mostly optional, and in most instances, you only need to use that. So let's see examples of the Charindex function. So this says use the accounts table to create first and last name columns that hold the first and last names for the primary POC. So the accounts table, right, it has a column for the primary point of contact names, right? Their full names. Now I want to create new columns where we'll have the first name in a new column and last name in a new column. So how can we achieve this using the Charindex function? Let me just make a new, let me just stick all these on the thing. So first things first, right? Let's look at the accounts table, what it looks like. So select top 10 star on accounts. So execute this, and this is the accounts table, right? So our question is asking us to look at the primary POC column, this column here, right? So you can see it contains names of points of contact, Tamara Tuna, Song Shields. But now I want to create a new column where we extract the first name. So we'll have Tamara in a new column. We'll have Tuma in another column, right? That's what we're trying to do. So how can we achieve this using SQL code? So before I go into the actual solution, let's see how the Charindex function works. So select, and the same example we used previously, Charindex, right? So here, the first thing is what I'm looking for, right? So let's use customer as before. Let's say I'm looking for the position of R in customer. So I put R here, and my text is what? Customer. Customer. So I'm saying, look through this customer text and return the position where you find R. So you count, right? That should be what, when you count, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 8 character. That should return 8 for me, right? But then note something also, right? These, you know what? Let me use lowercase r, and I'll do something else. So let's execute this and see what it gives us. And let me keep this an alias as position. Yeah. So you see, right, I return 8 as a result. So it's telling us that what, when you look through customer, right, you find R on the 8th position, right? And if I change it to uppercase R, you find that what, we'll still get the exact same result. That's why I said that the Charindex function, right, is not case sensitive. It treats uppercase and lowercase the same way. So you should have that in mind when working with the Charindex function. So now let's go back to our question, right? So we're asked to extract first name and last name from this column. So how can we achieve this? So we'll apply what we've done before now, the left function and right function, but then we'll also find a way to use this with the Charindex function. So select so if you look at this column, right, the first name here is what is 6 characters, Tamar. The second one is 4 characters. So they are all different characters. There's no way you can use a hard-coded number to return all the first names. Let me show you what I mean. So the first name, right, is 6 characters. So I come on here and say, okay, let me use 6. So select, I then do a left, right, the left function. So left function, and I'm working with a primary POC column, and 6 characters. And I'll call this as first name. From the accounts table. So when I execute this, you see that what is correct for the first person, right, Tamara, but the other people, right, they all have different lengths for the first names. For a few, it's correct, while for most, it's not correct, right? So we need to find a way to dynamically get the first name. So now, if you look closely at the primary POC, right, you see that what all you see that all the you see that all the names, right, they have a common characteristic. After the first name is a space before the last name, right? Tamara space Tuma, song space Shield. The same thing across all the names, right? So we'll try to use that common feature to extract the first name. And how can we do that? So let's what we can do is we use the Charindex function, right? We'll search for this name, right? We'll find the position where the space occurs, right? So you find out that when working with text, right, in data analytics, spaces are also considered as characters. And let me show you what I mean. So if I have this text, for example, select. So in SQL, right, in SQL server, how you count characters is using the len function, len function. So len. So if I say count the number of characters in A, B, C, for example, that should be 3 characters, right? So when I run this, it returns 3, right? Returns 3 as number of characters here. If I put a space, for example, between B and C, right? And I run this, it returns what? 4. So that space, right, is also a character. So note that, right? ABC and AB space C, they are entirely different, not the same thing. So you should note that when working with data. So using that, right, we'll try to use that in extracting the first and the last name. So this space, we'll use a Charindex function to search for the position of the spaces across all the rows, and then we'll use that to extract the first name. So let's replace this 6. Or you know what? Let me just copy this and do a slide 2K. So then I come here, right, and I see car index, right? And car index, if it takes in where you're looking for first, right? So I'm looking for spaces. And how do you indicate space? You just put your quotes, right? And you put a space in between. This means what? A space, right? Space. That's a space. So I'm saying look for the position of spaces in what column? In the primary POC column. In the primary POC column. That's this. right? So I'm saying look for the position of the spaces, right, in the primary POC column. So before I run this, let's confirm with the first column, right? The space, when you count Tamara, CAMARA, that's 6. The space is the 7th character, right? After the first name, space as the 7th character, right? Song Shield, after the first name, 4 characters, the space is the 5th character, right? So let's execute it and see if you get the same thing. So execute this, and you can see, right? The very first is 7, right? 5. So this is showing us what the position of what the first name, right? So it's giving us. So what we'll do now, instead of hard-coding numbers here, right? 6, I'll put this function here, right? Car index, and then the position of space. So this number 7569, that's what we'll have here, right? Instead of putting a fixed number that is not the same across all the rows, we'll use this car index function to get a dynamic number that shows you the position of all the spaces, right? So I'll put that function here now. Instead of putting a number there, I'll put this number there. So what I'm saying is what left function, look at the primary POC column, right? And extract from the left-hand side all the characters up to the space, right? In the primary POC column. So let's execute this and see what it gives us. So I come on here and execute this. And you can see, right, it returns the actual. So let me return the names also. So we can compare and see. No, it's not name actually, that's primary POC. Yeah, cool. So this the primary POC, right? And you can see we get the actual correct first name, Tamara, Song, Judy, Serafina, etc. So there's something to note, right? Since this result, for example, is counting up to the spaces, right? 7, for example. So the left function is saying what? Tamara, extract the first 7 characters. So that's Tamara and the space. So you won't see it here, right? But all these names, they all have spaces. They all have spaces after the first name, but you won't see it here, right? So what I can do is I come on here and I'll subtract 1 minus 1 from this value. So instead of 7, right? This first guy, instead of 7, this will return 6 for me, right? Return 6. So let me show you what I mean, right? So I come on here and I put a minus 1 here. When I execute this, right? It returns what? 6. It returns 4 here, 5. But initially, right? Initially, name, and then put this also. First name with space. Yeah, cool. So I'll pick up minus 1 from here. Yeah, cool. So you can see, right? This, why am I making this mistake? It should be primary POC, not name. Primary POC. Yeah, cool. So if you look here closely, right, you see that what this is the primary POC name, right? So this is the car index, but now I'm subtracting 1, right? 1. Find the space, that's 7. So Tamara 6 plus space 7. Subtract 1, that's 6. And when you count the actual names here, right, that's Tamara, that's actually 6. This is what I want. But this, if I use it without minusing 1, it will return the name plus the space. That's 7 characters, right? But I don't want that. So that's why I'm including -1 in this query here, right? -1. So subtract the space. I don't want that in my results. That's what I'm trying to do. So I'll come on here and execute this. And you see, right, it returns the names, right, without spaces. Even though it looks the same, but actually, right, there are no spaces in this result here. That's what I want. So we have the first name, right? But we are not done. We also want to extract the last name. So let me take this to a new line. So for the last name, right? It will be a bit different from what we just did. So for the last name, we are trying to return TUMA, right? Tumor. The same drill. If I use the right function and just choose 4. Yeah, so the same drill, right? If you use the right function here. So what I want for this first row is TUMA, right? Tumor. If I use 4, right, for tumor, if I go to the next line, the last name is more than 4 characters. So we need to find a way to dynamically return all the last names, right, from this column. So all we can do is to apply some logic, right? So how can I extract the number of characters for the last name? Since we're able to get the first name, right, and the spaces by using this function, right, the Charindex, right? So this returns the characters, right? The first name and spaces. What I can do is we'll use the length of the entire text. So everything here, right? So that's Tamara space tumor, for example. That's 6 plus 1, 7 plus 4 tumor. That's 11 characters. If I subtract the first name and space, right, 7 from 11, I'll get 4, which is what tumor. And that's what's the actual length, right, of the last name. If I pass that to the right function, that will return the correct value, right? Let me come again, right? So Tamara and space, that's 7, right? I want everything after the space, right? So if I can find a way to extract the characters, right, to the space, the right function will then take everything else from that space onwards. That's TUMA. So this text now, the length is what? 6 plus 1, 7 plus 4, 11, right? And this Charindex function, it gives us the position of what the space, that's 7. So Tamara and space, this function will give us its position, right? 7. The length function will give us the entire length of the text, that's 11. If I use the length 11, subtract that, right, with the Charindex function, right, 7, I'll get 4. And when I pass that to the right function, that will extract the very last characters, that's tumor. So we'll apply that and it will make more sense, right? But the same logic, right? The second row also, you have song space shields, right? So this song, 4 characters plus a space, that's 5. 5 plus shields, shield is 7 characters, that's 12 characters, right? So song and space, that's 5 characters. This function returns what? This Charindex function returns the value till what? that space, that's 5. The length will return 12. 12 minus 5 will give us what? 7, which is the shields, right? If I pass that 7 to the right function, it will give me what? The correct last name, that's shields. So let's try to apply this logic and see if it actually works. So here, first things first, this is like where we are trying to test and explain what we're doing, right? So let me just do that here, this query. So here, passing the length function. So the length function returns the length of a character, right? So length of primary POC. So you can see this returns the length, right? 11, for example, 6 plus space 7 plus 4, 11, right? This 12, this 10, right? If I subtract this 11, right, from 7, I will get 4. That's Tuma's length. 12 from 5, I will get 7. That's shields. 10 from 6, I will get 4. That's Lipo's length, right? So if I just put that subtraction here, minus this value here, right? So I'm saying the length minus what? This first name is space. That's what I'm trying to do. Now you can see, right? That's 4. So if you look at the length here, right? This length is the exact length of all the last names. This tumor, this shields, this Lipo, Banda, etc. Right? That's what it's trying to do. So I'll just come on here, right? Right function. So the right function, it takes in the text, right? Primary POC in this instance, primary POC, and then the character position, right? Number of characters to extract, and that's simply what this values here, length minus what the first name and space. So I'll put that here as the position. Once I have this, right, this is my right function. I close the bracket for the right function, and I'll call this as last name. So I execute everything here. Let's see if it works correctly. And you can see, right, you have what the first name correctly, the last name correctly. So Tuma, Shield, Lipo, Panda, etc. So you can see that the logic works correctly. So we're able to extract the first name and last name using the left-right function and combining with what's the car index function. So if it's not clear, you can ask questions in the chat. So on to the next example. We are asked to do the exact same thing, right? But now we are trying to apply to what the sales rep names in the sales reps table. And now we want just the first and last name columns. So sales rep table, I'll just do a simple select statement to see the top 10 rows in the table before we do our analysis. Select top 10 star from the sales rep table. So these are our sales rep table, right? We have 3 columns. We have ID, name, and region ID. So for the name column, we want to extract the first name and the last name. So there's the exact same drill, right? So we can have a name column. And then this, I'll just copy this formula and tweak it, right? Well, let's type it from scratch. So the left function, right? And it will take in the name column, name. So name, and then we'll use the Charindex function, Charindex function. So just like the exact same structure, right? First name space. So we'll find the space position in all the rows. So I'll put Charindex and then the space that's close to the space. And this instance, right, we're looking at the name column now. Name column return the position of all the spaces. And I'll put a -1, right? So exclude all the spaces there as first name. And then the same drill, right? For the last name, right function. And here name. So I'll say length of the name column minus. For this, right, we'll take out the -1. And we'll call this last name. So we'll have this from the sales rep table. From the sales rep table. So I can execute this. And you can see, right, this is the name of the sales reps. These are the first names, these are the last names, and they all look accurate, right? Elberfelder, Sibyl, Lawyer, etc. So this works accurately. So let's go on to the next question. Okay, I think this is all for Charindex. So the next concept, that is the concat function. So as name implies, right, concat, that's like concatenating strings together. So the concat function, it adds two or more strings together. And the syntax, right, concats, in parentheses, you have different strings and you separate them with commas, right? And this combines all those strings together. So let's see actual examples. So the first question says, each company in the accounts table wants to create an email address for each primary POC. The email address should be the first name of the primary POC dot the last name primary POC at companyname.com. So let me show you what I mean, right? So what they mean is email address, right? For example, obinna.iheanacho at udacity.com, for example, right? So first name dot last name at company.com. That's how it works, right? So once you do the exact same thing on the accounts table, you're working on accounts table. So first things I'll try to look at the sales rep, the accounts table one more time. Select top 10 star. Yeah. So first name, dot last name at company.com. We're trying to do. So this is where we'll get the first name and last name from. Dot first name dot last name at company this name.com. Trying to do. So I think we already have the first name. So we already have the first name, right? This is the first name. We already have the last name. So this is the name, this is the first name, this is the last name, right? So we're trying to build on our previous solution. We already have first name, we already have last name. This is the company name, right? So our solution is just what? Tamara.tumor at walmart.com. We're trying to do, right? So what we can do is we can use a subquery or a CTE. So for this, let me use a CTE for this, right? So I'll call this with this table, what we call it now? We'll call it email table. This email table as, right, this is our email table. So our email table has 3 columns, right? The name, the first name, and the last name. So now what we can do is we'll try to create our email now from this table. So our email is meant to have the first name, right? So I'll say select. So in SQL, right, the concat function used to combine text together. So I'll say concat. And what's the first thing for our email? That's the first name. So I'll type in first name here. Comma. So email is first name, then dot, right? A dot. So the dot comes in quotes. I'll put a dot. And then first name, right? Dots. Then last name comes next. So I'll put the last name here. Last name. And then next thing is what's the at, right? So in quotes, I'll put the at symbol in quotes. At symbol in quotes. So Tamara.tumor at, then company name, right? Company name. So I'll put the company name, that name. And lastly, right, name.com. So in quotes, I'll put .com there. Quotes. And these was from our CT table, right? That's email table. So from email table, so we are saying is what's combine first name together, last name. Before I run this, right, let me just do a simple demo what concat does. So select, if I say concat opener, for example, comma, a space, for example, comma, and my surname, for example. Right. So this saying what combine these 3 texts together. Combine Obina, a space, and Ihanacho together, right? Should be a quote there. So when I run this now, this query, all right, you see it combines what those texts together, Obina, space, and Ihanacho together. So the exact same thing, right? We have this table called email table, a CT table, right? From this table now, we're trying to combine the first name with a full stop, Tamara dot, then last name, then at, then name, right? Company name, Walmart, and then .com together. So when I run this whole stuff, let me just take this off. When I run this whole query, right, everything here, I execute this. So let me use an alias as email. So it has a cool name. So execute this. And you can see, right, this is the email. So you can see we have first name dot last name at companyname.com, right? First name dot last name at companyname.com, etc. So the concat function has helped us combine all these elements to create the email for us. So on to the next question. So this says, you may have noticed that in the previous solution, some company names include spaces, which will certainly not work in an email address. See if you can create an email address that will work by removing all of the spaces in the account's name. So basically, some of the names, right, contain spaces. So for example, if you look at the row 2, right? Space. Have a space, right? Exxon space mobile. Same thing here too. Backshare, you have a space, then Hathaway, right? And this won't work for an email. So you're not spaces between emails. So for this, what we'll do is we'll try to use so the first thing to note is that the spaces, they all occur on the names, right? Company names, ExxonMobil, Berkshire Hathaway. Everything else looks good except the names. So we need to tweak something with the names, right? So here I will introduce a new function, right? Called replace. So replace, right? What it does is that, let's say, for example, I have a text, right? Select, and I have something like this. Select this text just says what's tragic, right? Tragic, tragic, right? Let's say I want to replace CR with an M. So I want to change tragic to magic, for example. So I can use the replace function. So I'll say replace. So tragic, right? So you can see what's happening here, right? I have some prompts. So the first argument is what? Expression to be searched, right? That's what my text tragic. Next argument is what? Search expression. What do I want to replace? That's what? TR, right? So in quotes, TR, trying to replace. And what I want to replace TR with an M, right? So what I'm saying is what? Look at this word tragic. Replace TR with an M, right? So let's see what this gives us. So execute. And you can see, right, from tragic, I now have what? Magic. I replace the TR here with an M, right? So back to our table, do the exact same thing. We'll try to remove all the spaces by replacing them with nothing, right? So this is a name. So I'll say replace a name, right? So in the name, right, look for where you have spaces and replace them with nothing, right? So if you see a name that has a space, replace that space with nothing. Okay, this should be replace. So look at the names, right? Those are spaces. It is space, right? And there is nothing. So I'm saying replace the space with nothing. Basically, take all the spaces off. That's what I'm doing. So when I run this, I expect to have all the spaces removed. So execute this, and you can see, right? ExxonMobil, no space here again. Same thing, so Berkshire that way, there's no space here again, right? So we're able to remove those spaces using the replace function. So let's go on to the next question. So this says, would like to create an initial password which the users can change after your first login. So the first password will be the first letter of the primary POC's first name in lowercase, and then followed by the last letter of their first name in lowercase also. And next, the first letter of their last name. Yeah, so look at that. So the first letter of the password is the first letter of the primary POC's first name in lowercase, followed by the last letter of the first name in lowercase. Next, the first letter of the last name, right, in lowercase, and last letter of the last name in lowercase. And then followed by the number of letters in their first name and the number of letters in their last name. And lastly, the name of the company in uppercase with no spaces. So basically what they want us to do is, right, we get the first letter. So let me just run the query. I think this has what we need. Yeah, so the password, right, we'll have the first letter of the first name, that's T. The last letter, that's A, right? Same thing here too. First letter, that's T, and last letter, that's A. So that's TA, right? And then you have the number of characters in the first name, that should be 6. And number of characters in the last name, that's 4. And then lastly, the company name in uppercase, that should be TA 64, and then Walmart in capital letters. So we're trying to achieve the same thing for the other rows. So let me see. So this is the previous solution, right? The first name, last name. Let me include the company name also in the final result. Name. So that way we're able to know if we're getting the correct result. Everything, not just that. Yeah, so company name, first name, last name, and the email. Now I want to add a password, right? So first letter here, last letter here, first letter here, last letter here, then count the length of characters, that's 6, 4, and then company name in capital letters. So we'll just add this, right, to this query. Since they're all tied together, right? We want to add a new column for the password. So for this, we want the first character of the first name. So in lowercase, right? So select, show something. So this returns this word, right, in uppercase. If I want to change it to lowercase, similar to SQL, similar to Excel, right? Lower function help you do this. So lower, and then you wrap the string in the lower function. Execute this, right? And you see it returns this as what? Lowercase, right? The same thing. If this was in lowercase, for example, right? You can use the upper function, right, to wrap this, and it gets the uppercase, right? So we apply this in our current solution. Since we are asked to return the password, the letters in lower cases, right? So I'll come on here and I'll say, so for the password now, lower, right? So the first name in lowercase. So I'll take this step by step, right? So currently, what's the issue? First name, last name, that's email. Okay, this bracket here, that's the issue. Yeah, cool. So this is the first name, right? Case. But that's not all. We have to extract the very first character. So for this, we use a left function, right? Left function. So look at this name and extract the first character. That's T, right? And before I forget, we are trying to combine several things together. We use the concat function, right? Concat function. So this here, right, is the first letter, right, of the first name. The same thing too, right? Comma. So concat, right? Put a comma. What's the next thing I want to combine? I want to combine the last name, right? The last letter of the first name. So here I'll put a right function, not left now. From the right hand side, right? Return the very first character. That's the last name. So this should give me first name, last name, right? So I'll just execute this. Right. So that's CATA, right? CASS. Sorry, CASGJESA, right? Just like that. So it looks correct. So the next thing I want to do is the length of this first name, right? So that's just to confirm that I'm doing the right thing. That's the question. So the first letter of the first name. Okay, next thing is the first letter of the last name now. So it's the exact same thing. We'll just change it to let me come to a new line. We'll change it to last name now. The first letter of the last name. Same drill, right? Right function. But now for the last name. So it should be last name also. So I'll just execute this. So I'm sure you're on the right path. Yeah, cool. So I have TAT SGSS KELO. Yeah, I think it's looking accurate so far. So next thing I want to do is the length of the first name, right? So I'll put in length of first name. So length of first name, and next I'll do length of last name. So let me see what this gives us. 6 characters, 4 characters. Yeah, looking good. So I think it's remaining one more thing. That's the company name in upper cases. Company names all capitalized with no spaces. Okay, cool. So the last thing remaining is but then with no spaces. So I'll just put in the replace function. Let me try something. I think I can do upper after replacing, or upper before replacing. Let me try this way. You know what? Let me do it this way. So replace. So you see that there are spaces, right? But we don't want those spaces. So I'll say replace what you get from this. So if you see a space with nothing, so let me see. I think this looks accurate. So I'll say as password, and I think we have a correct result. So Tata 64 Walmart SGSS 47 ExxonMobil, etc. This looks accurate. So that's for the question, right? It looks kind of tricky, but just take it one step at a time, right? And you get the hang of it. So you're able to combine all of length, right? The name, the left, right functions, the Charindex functions, length, and the replace function also. And we're able to get a dynamic password. So let's go on to the next concept. So the cast function. So the cast function, what it does is that it converts a value of any type
into a specified data type. So the syntax, right, casts, then the value, right, you are working with maybe a column name, for example, you cast it to what specified type. Maybe you have a column as what text, and you change to what date, right, or integer or something else. So let's see examples. So the catch here is that our current table is kind of clean, right? So I'll just do a demo data and just explain how cast works. So let me see. Yeah, I'm not saying anything. So you can hear me now. I was trying to create this demo table. So I'm trying to just create I'm trying to create a date, right? So this is the year 2021. This is the month 1, and this is the day, right? So 1st of January 2021. And then this is like a city, right? It's a demo table. I'm trying to just choose what I just created right from this table. So this is meant to be a date, right? But you can see that the structure is what is showing like a number or text, right? So let's do an example. So you have common date functions, right? For example, you have months, for example. So if I say months, right? So it says what? Conversion failed when converting dates and or time from character string. So there are times when maybe you bring data from sources like Excel, etc., right? They look like dates, but maybe they have the wrong data type, like general type or string or text, right? You need to use SQL functions to convert it to the proper type. For example, dates, right? So in this case now, this query here, right? It looks like a date, but it's not a date, it's a text. So you need to use SQL functions, right, to cast it to the right type before you can then carry out operations on it. So if I say use a cast function, right? Cast function, and then cast whatever you have here, right? Let me use a different name so it doesn't confuse you. Demo date. So this is the alias for the column name, right? But here I'm saying this. So here now I'm saying what's this value here, right? This creating a date, right? Year, month, and day. But like we saw earlier, it had the wrong type. It was like a text, right? We are seeing here is a text. I tried to use a date function with it. It didn't work, gave me errors. Now I'm saying what this text value now, this string value, right? Convert it to what's a date type, right? So I'm saying what cast this value, right? As what's a date type. So let me execute and see what it gives me now. Let me see. Cast, select. Okay, that was happening. So cool. So we're meant to have like hyphens, right? That separates the dates, etc. So let's do the demo from scratch, right? From scratch. So this was our original query, right? Execute this. And you can see it's showing you what's year -1-1. It looks like a date, but it's not a correct date, right? If I try to carry out a date function, for example, I say extract, give me the months now from this date, right? It will throw up an error. Oh, crazy, actually worked. So if I say, so I cast this as a date, cast this. As dates, right? So if I take off this month, for example, and just want the actual query originally. So the cast function, right, it converts what you have, right, to an actual date type. So previously it was like a string, right? But when you cast it now, you have what an actual date type. I like a simple example. If I have something like this, select, so I have, let's say I have a float value 24.5443, for example. So when I run this, right, this is a decimal number, it floats. But if I come here and say cast this, right, cast this value as an integer, for example. So I'm saying, sorry, as integer, right? So I'm saying convert this decimal value to an integer, right? A whole number. So you can see, right, it removes all the decimal parts and returns what? An integer value, right? The same thing, you can do the converse, right? I could say converts. So I say cast 24 as what? Floats, right? So you have 24.0. So it is a 0.0, right? But it won't show the decimal part. But this now is like a float type, right? So you can convert across different types from string to dates, integer to floats, vice versa, etc. with the cast function. So this is useful when you're working with data, right? And maybe you're trying to divide some values, but they are saved as a string. You can convert the string, right? If they are numbers, can convert them to what? Actual numbers, and then carry out your operations with them. So the thing here is that our data they are all cleaned up. So we can't really see a real application for the cast function. But then if you have issues where you're working with data in SQL and the types are mismatched, then the cast function would help you you can convert it to the right type before you then apply your transformations and it works accurately. And then the last thing we'll look at is the Coalesce function, right? So Coalesce function returns the first non-null value in a list. So syntax, right? Coalesce, you have several values by commas, right? So let me show you a simple example. Let's say I have a list of values. So I select select so I have a list of values. Null, 10, null. So I have these values, right? Coalesce. So these are all list of values, right? So we have 5 values here. So Coalesce, right, it will return the first non-null value, which is 10, right? So when I execute this, so the correct syntax near 10. Okay, I think if I place in quotes, I have a mixture of different types. I think that's the issue. So I execute this. Yeah, cool. So it skips the null values, right? This, and returns the first non-null value, which is this 10 in quotes here, right? So that's how Coalesce works. And this is useful, right, when working with data. So let's say I have so in our table, we have the orders table and the cost of time. Let me just use this query here. So just copy this, Control X. So here, right, we have the accounts and orders table, and we want to join them together. So the idea is that accounts, right, they purchase products, and their orders, right, are their other details are entered in the orders table, right? So when you join the orders and the account tables together, any accounts that existing that have not yet placed an order, its values will be empty, right? They will be null, right? So here you're saying return all the rows, right? From the, when you join the accounts and order tables together, return all the rows where the quantity bought is 0. It means that any accounts that didn't buy anything, right, they will show up here. So let's execute this and see. So I execute this, and this is the account table ID down to sales rep ID, right? So you see this ID 731, Goldman Sachs with this website, etc. These are all the details, right? But when I join this table to the others table, I can see that this particular customer, right, Goldman Sachs, he has not bought anything, right? All the other details are null, they are empty. ID is empty, account ID is empty, everything here is empty. So you're not made any purchase yet, right? They're all empty. So let's say instead of having null values showing up here, I want to replace these null values with something else. That's where Coalesce comes into play, right? So I can replace this ID, for example, with the actual ID here, right? So this ID, they're the same thing. But because he has not made any purchase here, it's showing us empty here, right? Account ID also, or called at, right? So called at this empty because he has not made any purchases yet. So you can't really track any details for the others. And let's say, for example, I want to replace this quantity with 0. Instead of null, I have 0 showing up here. We could achieve that also. So I could say the exact same query, we'll just make some slight tweaks. So I could say, you know what, let me just do this. Select top and star from accounts. Execute. Okay, select a.id, a.name, a.website, a. I'm gonna take everything. Prime POC. And then let's take this few. And then I have o.id, o.plus quantity. O.account ID, rather. O.plus quantity. O.standard quantity. So I'm returning if you select columns, right, from both the tables. So I execute this, right? No, I don't need this again. Pick it up. This is what I want, this square. All right, look at this. So same as before, right? But I just took a few columns. So all the account tables, they have data, right? But the others table data, the columns are empty. No. Account ID plus standard and poster. So what I can say is this is the account ID for others table, right? Is empty. So what I can say is I want to replace this account ID that's empty with this account ID from the accounts table, right? So I can use the Coalesce function. So I'll say, instead of having it as empty, replace it with what? This account ID. So I'll come on here and I'll just prefix the column name, right? The Coalesce function. So I'll say Coalesce this empty ID column and replace the null value with what? the actual a.id. So a.id is simply this column here, right? This ID here, 1731. So I'll say Coalesce with that, right? I'll close the bracket. And I can give it an alias as field ID, for example. So when I execute this, right? Let's see what happens. So you see, right? Before it was empty, but now I've replaced the null value there, right? With what? 1731. And if I want, I can put anything I want there. I can say replace it with what? Something else, for example, 1000, right? And you see you have 1000 there. So it's like you're trying to clean data up, right? Maybe where you say no, instead of no, have something else replace that value. That's what it does, right? So the same drill, all these quantities, they're all null. I can say instead of being null, replace them with 0, right? So I'll come on here and say Coalesce. So quantity, right? Instead of being null, put a 0 there, for example. Same thing here, so Coalesce this, right? Instead of it's being null, put a 0 there, for example. And lastly, instead of being null, put a 0 there also. So when I execute this, right? I'm trying this first step on that. So you see that works. And you can give it a column name. I can say as gross quantity. As standard quantity. And lastly, as poster quantity. So I execute this, right? So instead of null, you now have what? Zeros. I've successfully replaced the nulls, right, with 0. So Coalesce helps you, right, with data cleaning. You can replace unwanted null values with something you specify, right? It could be hard-coded, or it could maybe replace another column value, whichever way you want it to occur. So that's all I have for today, right? SQL data cleaning. We've gone through left, right functions, car indexes, using Coalesce, using the case, and also I think we went through Concat function also. So any questions before I wrap up for today? So if you have a question, you can type in the chat or raise your hand. If there are no questions, I think we can wrap up as time is fast spent. So if there are no questions, right, thank you all for your time, and I'll make the recordings